Hi, I'm Barbie. I showed up for Thanksgiving with homemade pie and hope, but when my mom opened the door, she looked me in the eyes and said, "Sorry, you have the wrong house." The truth? It wasn't just one cruel moment. It was years of being slowly erased. They took my money, used my name, even filed for government aid pretending to be me, all while telling neighbors they'd bought the house back on their own. But how do you fight back when your own family rewrites the story and leaves you out of it? Want to know what I did next? Stay with me. You'll see why I didn't just walk away. I took back what was mine. I hadn't been back in almost a year. The desert air hit different when it was wrapped in the scent of turkey and cinnamon from other people's homes, but not yours. Scottsdale in November had that kind of golden quiet, the kind that tricked you into thinking things were warmer than they really were. I pulled up to the curb in front of the house I paid for, heart knocking harder than it should have. In the back seat sat 2 pie tins I'd made from scratch, a bottle of wine nestled between my knee, and a stack of gifts I had wrapped in blue paper. Willa always liked blue. And for some dumb reason, I told myself she'd be happy to see me. That this year would be different. That maybe they'd come around. The house looked exactly as I left it last March. The porch was trimmed with twinkle lights, tasteful, understated. Willa's style. The lawn was cut, the steps swept. Even the wreath was new. And yet, somehow, I still had that pit in my stomach, like I'd shown up to the wrong theater on the wrong night. I adjusted my scarf and stepped out of the car, careful not to scuff the pie tins against the door. My boots crunched on the gravel as I made my way to the porch, each step a little more unsteady than the last. I took a breath, rang the bell. The music inside stopped for half a beat. Then came the sound of glass clinking and soft laughter. When the door finally opened, Willa stood there in a burgundy blouse, a wine glass balanced in one hand, the other clutching the doorknob like it might fly off. She looked me over. Red scarf, pie, wine. The hopeful grin I hadn't quite realized I'd been wearing. "Sorry," she said with that forced smile she used with strangers. "You have the wrong house." I blinked. "What?" She didn't move, didn't open the door wider, just stood there, smiling like I was a door-to-door evangelist. "You must have gotten the addresses mixed up," she added, her voice a notch too loud. "Happy Thanksgiving, though." Before I could speak, she turned and shut the door, softly, like nothing had happened, like I wasn't her daughter. I stood there dumbly, pies still warm in my arms, the wine sweating through the paper bag. A neighbor across the street, Mrs. Sloan, I think, gave me a little wave from her porch chair. I turned back toward the curb, breath tight in my chest. Greta Sloan crossed over a few steps, balancing her little schnauzer on a leash, pretending not to look too curious. "I thought they lost this place," she said casually, as if we were catching up over tea. "But your mom told me they bought it back after the whole bankruptcy scare. She said your brother helped with the down payment." I couldn't even find the words. I nodded, though. That strange, practiced kind of nod people do when they've just been slapped and are trying not to cry in public. "Happy Thanksgiving," she said, already turning back. I got into the car without looking back at the house. The warmth from the pies was leaking into my lap, and all I could think about was how many nights I spent transferring money from my savings to their mortgage account. How I covered their gas bill, the HEOA fees, even the damn pest control subscription Willa insisted was essential. I paid for everything. But somehow I'd been erased. I sat there for a while, engine off, watching silhouettes pass the front windows. Every once in a while, the door would swing open to let in more guests. People I didn't know. People who weren't told they had the wrong house. I remember when Willa called me last spring and said she was proud of me. That my success gave the family status again. She never said thank you. She just mentioned how nice the kitchen remodel looked, like it had appeared out of thin air, like I hadn't wired the entire 30 grand for it myself. I stared out the windshield as the sky turned a bruised kind of purple. A few lights flicked on in the yard. Dean's voice echoed faintly from inside, telling some overinflated story. I wondered if he still used the new SUV I helped him co-sign for. Probably. Rain started, not much, but enough. Rare in this part of Arizona. Just enough to blur the glass, to make everything shimmer like a mirage. My hand found the key in the ignition. I turned it slowly. The engine hummed to life, and I sat back, staring at that house. My house. The one they told everyone they bought back with pride and family hard work. It's funny. You think betrayal comes loud. A slam. A scream. A confrontation. But most of the time, it's just a door that never opens. I didn't drive home right away. Instead, I let the rain guide me out of their neighborhood, past the church with the chipped nativity statues, past the Safeway where I used to pick up Willa's prescriptions, and toward the stretch of roadside motels along the interstate. The neon sign of the Desert View blinked like it was tired of being noticed. I pulled in, parked under the flickering light, and shut off the engine. I'd paid for this motel once before, when Willa called in a panic about a burst pipe and said they couldn't stay at the house during repairs. I booked her 3 nights without blinking. She never thanked me, just complained about the towels being rough. I'd never stepped inside myself, until now. The room smelled like lemon disinfectant and something older, like stories too tired to be told again. The bedding was stiff, the lighting a touch too yellow, but it was quiet. Safe. I set the pies on the desk, the wine next to them. I didn't even have the appetite to open the bottle. I peeled off my coat, sat on the edge of the bed, and stared at the wall. The silence gave my memory too much room to roam. On the table was a Thanksgiving flyer with a smiling family under the slogan, "Family means always having a seat at the table." I nearly laughed, not bitterly, just dryly. Because I had cooked that table, set it, funded the plates, the chairs, the wine glasses that Willa now clinked with strangers. Last Thanksgiving, I remember showing up a day early. I made stuffing from scratch, roasted 2 turkeys. Dean liked white meat. Willa swore by dark. I brought centerpieces, coordinated linens, even set place cards because I thought it might matter. During dinner, Willa introduced me to her friend as the one who helps out a lot. Not her daughter, not Barbie, just a helper. I hadn't thought about it then. I brushed it off. But sitting on that motel bed, everything came back with sharp edges. The mattress creaked as I leaned over to grab my phone. A notification blinked. November 14th. My birthday had passed 12 days ago. Dean had called that morning. I remember hoping it was to wish me well, even though I knew better. "Hey," he'd said, no intro. "Do you have a spare $3,000? Harlow's car needs a new transmission. She's freaking out." No happy birthday. No, how are you? Just another need. Another fire I was expected to put out with my wallet. I'd said yes. Transferred it before I finished my coffee. That night, I bought myself a slice of cake from the corner bakery, sat alone in my apartment, and scrolled through Facebook to see if anyone else remembered. Willa hadn't called. Just a text later that evening. "Did you wire it yet?" I lay back on the motel bed and stared at the ceiling. The wallpaper was slightly peeling near the vent. I thought about all the ways I'd edited my memories to make them less painful. How I'd turned slights into misunderstandings, coldness into busy schedules, rejection into maybe next time. But then came that picture. I pulled out my laptop from the overnight bag and opened a folder labeled Family. Inside, a dozen photos from past holidays. I opened one from 3 years ago, Thanksgiving at the old house before the foreclosure. Everyone smiled around the table. Dean had his arm around Harlow. Willa was holding up a pie I made, pretending she baked it. I looked for myself. Found me partially behind a plant in the corner of the frame. You could barely see my face. I wasn't even seated. I must have been passing by, probably clearing dishes. I sat back, staring at the screen. How many moments like that had I lived through without even realizing what was happening? How often had I accepted being background noise in my own story? I closed the laptop. The room was still. A truck rumbled past outside. Somewhere in the hallway, a door slammed. I didn't cry. I just lay there, arms folded across my chest, listening to the quiet of the room and the noise in my head. When you've been left out long enough, you stop asking why. You stop hoping for someone to explain it. You convince yourself you're just busy, or they're forgetful, or maybe you're hard to reach. But eventually, all those excuses fade, and what you're left with is a truth that doesn't need to shout. I whispered it to myself just once. If you're excluded long enough, you stop wondering why. You just begin to accept it as your place. I didn't sleep much that night at the motel. I lay on the edge of the bed, arms folded like a stranger in my own body. The hum of the ice machine outside the door kept me company. At around 5 a.m., I gave up pretending and rolled out of bed, brushing my teeth with the tiny motel toothpaste that always tasted like chalk. By 6:30, I was already packed. Instead of driving straight back to Austin, I found myself circling old haunts. The stretch of road near McDowell, where we used to buy Christmas trees. The park where Dean broke his arm falling off the jungle gym, and I carried him, all 80 pounds of him, down to the car, while Willa panicked and blamed the city for not installing rubber mats. Somehow, I ended up pulling into their driveway. I wasn't sure what I expected. The house looked quiet. I knocked, out of habit, but the door was unlocked. Inside, everything looked curated. Candles in the entryway, a faint vanilla scent, jazz playing on the speakers. Willa's touch. But underneath that polish was a stale truth I'd come to know too well. They weren't home. A note was stuck to the fridge in Willa's curling script. Back by 2. Don't forget almond milk if you head out. I laughed. It was so absurd, it almost didn't sting. The memory came without permission. One of the birthdays Willa forgot. Not the forgetting part. The cleanup. I had flown in for what was supposed to be a small dinner for Dean and Harlow's anniversary. I arrived a day early, stocked the fridge, arranged the flowers. I paid for catering because Willa said she couldn't manage the stress. Guests filled the house. I floated in and out of rooms, offering drinks, adjusting silverware. After dessert, Willa found me in the kitchen scraping plates. She leaned in, smiling that smile she reserved for appearances. Can you take the trash out, sweetheart? And don't forget to wipe the baseboards. Company's still around. I froze, plate still in my hand. Sure, I said. The baseboards. Like I was the help. It wasn't new. It just hadn't been so blatant before. And I'd said nothing, because I didn't want to cause a scene, because I thought enduring it meant I was strong. I did it all. Took out the trash, wiped down every baseboard, even swept the porch. Later that night, I caught Willa laughing with Greta Sloan on the patio. You're lucky to have someone so reliable, Greta said, watching me through the glass. What agency is she with? Willa raised an eyebrow. What? Greta gestured toward me. The caregiver, the one you hired, she's fantastic. Willa didn't correct her. I stood there, holding a stack of folded chairs, invisible in my own house. I wasn't wearing a name tag, but I might as well have been labeled utility, dispensable, not family. I didn't interrupt. I didn't walk out. I just kept folding. That night, I slept in the guest room. Dean and Harlow had taken the master, since their AC was supposedly acting up. Willa had an early morning and needed rest. So I got the guest room, in my house. I woke up to another note on the fridge. Coffee out? Can you pick up almond milk before you head back? No thank you. No goodbye. Just another chore before exiting stage left. Back at the motel later that week, I opened my laptop and clicked on a folder I'd kept hidden for years. Something I titled, Things I Will Never Say Aloud. It wasn't a diary, more like a storage unit of moments too bitter to touch in real life. I added 2 lines. When someone mistakes you for staff in your own house, you realize love and labor have no receipt. I was never invited. I was just useful. I stared at those sentences for a while. Useful. That word hung in the air like mildew. Useful is something you keep around when it's convenient. A spare charger. An umbrella in a dry state. You don't love useful things. You use them, then forget where you put them. Until it rains. The next morning, I left the motel early. I didn't even bother with the continental breakfast. Just grabbed a paper cup of coffee and drove in silence. The sun hadn't fully broken over the mountains yet, and the world looked washed out and quiet, like it was holding its breath. So was I. 2 hours later, I pulled up to the house again, this time with a thick manila envelope on the passenger seat. Inside it was the printed invite for a panel I was speaking on, Women Shaping the Future of Healthcare Technology. My name, bold and centered, was there on the flyer. I'd been asked to open the event, to share how I'd built my company from nothing. I'd even been told the mayor would be attending. It felt important. Not for the prestige. For me. Because after everything, I still craved one thing from Willa I never quite got. I parked, walked up the driveway, and knocked once. She opened the door halfway, holding a receipt and what looked like a list of coupons. Her reading glasses slid halfway down her nose. "Oh, you're early," she said, not moving aside. "I'm on my way to Phoenix," I said, holding up the envelope. "There's a conference. I'm one of the keynote speakers." She blinked. "That's nice. I have to run to Fry's. You know how crazy these stores get before the holidays." I handed her the envelope anyway. She glanced at it, nodded like I'd just handed her a church bulletin, and slid it under the stack of grocery flyers on the counter. She didn't ask what the panel was about. She didn't ask when it was. Just turned and walked toward the kitchen. I stood there for a few seconds longer than I should have. Then left. 2 days later, I was back for Dean and Harlow's baby shower. One Willa planned, I paid for, and had exactly zero say in. I brought the cake. I booked the tent rental. I arranged the parking with the neighbors. Still, it wasn't my thing. During the party, a woman named Lisa from Willa's book club asked me what I did for a living. It was a simple question. I told her briefly about the company, the partnerships we'd launched, and how we were expanding into underserved communities. She looked genuinely impressed. But halfway through my sentence, Willa clapped her hands sharply. "Dean, show everyone the ultrasound, the 3D one." Everyone shifted toward the screen on the living room wall, where Harlow queued up the video. Laughter and coos filled the room. Lisa turned, mid-nod, and walked away like I hadn't been speaking at all. I stood there with a half-full glass of wine, staring at the conversation I had just been cut out of. Later that night, while helping Harlow find her phone under the buffet table, her screen lit up as I picked it up. I didn't mean to look, but I saw it. A group chat called Trent Family Thanksgiving. She had dozens of messages open, plans, menus, photos, even memes. One in particular stopped me cold. It was a blurry shot of me giving a talk last spring with the caption, "Barbie's TED Talk on Why I'm Better Than My Family drops Friday." My name wasn't in the group. No one had invited me. No one thought I'd see it. I handed the phone back and smiled politely. After the last guest left, I got into my car and sat in the dark for a long time before dialing. Willa answered on the third ring. "You knew I wasn't in that group," I said, voice steady. There was a pause, then her tone turned soft, as if she were explaining something obvious to a child. "Oh, honey, you're always so busy. We didn't want to bother you with the back and forth. It's nothing personal." I laughed once. Quiet. Hollow. "You don't have to invite people you want to forget." "Barbie, don't be dramatic." I hung up. I didn't wait for a callback. I didn't expect one. That line between us had always been blurred, but now, finally, I saw it for what it was. A wall. I didn't sleep that night. Not out of sadness, not anymore. It was calculation. My body lay still, but my mind moved like clockwork. Every tick another memory, every talk another receipt. I wasn't angry. Anger is too noisy. I was awake. At 8:06 the next morning, my phone buzzed. An alert from my financial tracking app, one I'd only activated recently with Marina's help. "Transaction flagged. $6,450. Withdrawal from emergency account. Scottsdale Custom Jewelers. I stared at it for a moment, then tapped through. The account was supposed to be used for medical emergencies. That's what Willa insisted when she begged me to create it. Just in case something happens, she'd said. You'd want to help your mother, wouldn't you? I had agreed, because of course I would. Until now, it had only been touched for things like prescription refills or a dental visit she claimed insurance wouldn't cover. This? This wasn't healthcare. A few hours later, I was drinking coffee at a quiet cafe off Indian School Road, watching the steam rise from my mug as I scrolled through social media. Dean's post was right there, front and center. She said yes. Couldn't have picked a better stone for the best girl. Blessed. She said yes. Trent Legacy. The photo showed a large diamond ring, glinting in the Arizona sun. I recognized the design. It was from a local jeweler Willa had once mentioned, admiring, in case Dean ever got serious. I took a slow sip of coffee, then opened my notes app and typed 2 words. Final straw. By noon, I was back at the house. I didn't knock this time. I had keys. I'd paid for the locks. Willa was in the dining room, papers spread out around her like she was drafting legislation. She looked up when I walked in. Oh, I wasn't expecting you. Clearly. I walked over and glanced at the papers. One caught my eye. Estate planning, Trent family. She tried to casually shuffle it under another folder, but I already saw enough. What's this? I asked. Oh, just some paperwork, she said, not meeting my eyes. Estate planning. Yes, for the future. Dean has a baby coming and what? She sighed like I was exhausting. Barbie, you're independent. You've built a life. Dean, well, he's building one. He has a family now. He needs stability. I bought this house. Yes, but that was years ago. You wouldn't even miss it. That sentence didn't come with venom. It wasn't even cold. That made it worse. It was delivered with the kind of dismissive softness reserved for small children and secretaries. I reached into my bag and pulled out a file folder of my own. I had printed the spreadsheets myself the night before. Every transfer, every cash withdrawal, every monthly emergency deposit I'd made over the past 7 years. I placed it neatly on the table, then slid it across to her. She stared at it, unmoved. What's this supposed to be? She asked. Proof, I replied, that this ends now. She gave a short, dry laugh. You always had a flair for the dramatic. I have a flair for receipts, I said, and boundaries, and this is both. She didn't reach for the folder, just stared at me like I was being unreasonable again, like I was trying to ruin a perfectly well-oiled machine. You know what, Barbie? This whole performance, coming in here with your spreadsheets and your righteous tone, it's tiring. You act like you've been wronged when all you've done is what family should do. You think giving money gives you leverage? No, I said, calm as I've ever been. I think giving money for years without acknowledgement makes me a fool, and I'm done being one. I walked out before she could respond. Outside, the wind was dry and sharp. The door closed behind me with more force than I used. It felt final, like something was officially over, even if she didn't know it yet. Back in my car, I opened the app and scrolled down to the recurring transfers. Utilities, groceries, HOA, the little extras labeled things like caregiver fund and home upkeep. I hit cancel on each one, confirming them slowly, deliberately. As I deleted the final one, a pop-up appeared. Are you sure you want to remove this payment? Yes. I was sure. Probably for the first time in my life when it came to them. I tapped the screen. That was it. No ceremony, no announcements. Just silence. The next morning started the same way many others had. Coffee, silence, a blinking cursor on a half-finished email. But this time, the silence felt earned. I wasn't waiting for a call. I wasn't wondering if I had overreacted. The quiet was mine. After breakfast, I drove into Austin's city center to meet with my banker. The branch wasn't far, about 15 minutes from my apartment, but the traffic made it feel longer. I didn't mind. The extra time gave me room to think. The woman at the front desk recognized me. "Hi, Miss Trent. Mr. Keller will be with you shortly." I sat across from the glass-walled office, watching a man in a crisp shirt and nervous smile sift through my file. When he waved me in, I entered with my shoulders squared. "I wanted a full audit of any accounts or liabilities tied to my name," I said without sitting. "All of it, even the closed ones." He adjusted his glasses. "Of course, just give me a moment." While he typed, I scanned the framed picture on his desk. His kids, a fishing boat, someone's diploma. I wondered if they ever questioned who really paid for their family home. A few clicks later, he frowned. "There's a dormant HELOC," he said. "A home equity line?" "Yes, technically still active. Looks like it was opened on a joint structure, 10 years ago, connected to a property in Scottsdale." My pulse slowed. "Is it drawing interest?" "Minimal, but technically, yes. If it were reactivated—" "Shut it down," I said. "Freeze it. Whatever you need to do. I want no connection to it. And if anything's drawn against it without my approval, I want fraud alerts triggered." He nodded quickly, pulling up a form. "Of course. I'll flag it now." I signed the paperwork, initialed in 3 places, then walked out without looking back. By the time I returned home, the sun had started dipping below the rooftops, casting long shadows across the driveway. I kicked off my shoes at the door and grabbed my laptop. There was one last thing nagging at me: the credit card. Years ago, I'd added Willa as a secondary user, just for emergencies. That's how she framed it. "I'd never use it without asking," she promised, hand over heart. "It's just peace of mind, that's all." Back then, I believed her. Now I opened the statement and scrolled. There it was, transaction after transaction. A $2,300 massage chair from a wellness boutique in Sedona, 2 luxury jewelry purchases from a shop in Scottsdale, and a dinner at a high-end steakhouse. 4 guests. Bottle of red. Nearly $600. In total, $6,273 in less than a month. I didn't feel angry. I felt clinical. I dialed the number on the back of the card. After the automated voice asked me to confirm my identity, I said the words I'd rehearsed on the drive home. "I need to deactivate this account. Immediately. Remove all secondary users, reverse any charges from these listed vendors, and mark this account as compromised. Yes, I understand what that means. Yes, I want that done today." The agent didn't ask questions. I imagined how many daughters had called in just like me, voice even, breath controlled, explaining that their mother had accidentally spent thousands without permission. After the call, I sat on the couch for a few minutes, laptop still open, cursor blinking on a blank email. Then I clicked Compose. Subject line: Termination of financial relationship, body. Willa, as of today, I've ended all financial involvement tied to your accounts. This includes cards, loans, and recurring payments. Do not contact me to reverse this decision. This is not a conversation. Barbie, I didn't send it. Not yet. But it sat there in my drafts, bold and waiting. It was the first time I'd ever typed her name without instinctively writing Mom. After closing the laptop, I walked to the window and looked out. My street was quiet. Lights on in a few houses. A couple walking their dog. The world still spinning. Back at my desk, I opened the folder I created the night before. Family Ledger. Inside, I'd saved everything. Screenshots of bank transfers, emails, birthday messages that doubled as loan requests, even a PDF of the Thanksgiving menu I paid for last year. It wasn't to use against them. It was to remind myself I wasn't crazy. That night, before bed, I logged into my financial dashboard. The interface showed every active payment: mortgage contributions, HOA fees, medical subscriptions, property taxes, all of it tied to that house. I hovered over the top tab, Cancel all scheduled transfers. One click. That's all it took. No fanfare, no guilt, just a clean severance in the form of a button. And I clicked it. The next morning, I poured myself a cup of coffee and opened my email, expecting invoices, a few client follow-ups, maybe the usual newsletter noise. What I didn't expect was a message from Clara, one of my colleagues at the healthcare nonprofit we had partnered with last spring. Subject: Nice piece on your brother. Saw this yet? The link opened to a local news site in Scottsdale. There, under the header, Hometown Innovator Launches Free Senior Health Initiative, was Dean's face, smiling, confident. And next to it, the clinic I'd helped fund, build, and maintain. The article praised his vision, his commitment to underserved seniors, and, this part made my stomach flip, his collaboration with city officials to expand outreach. Every quote he gave sounded borrowed, like someone feeding him buzzwords he didn't fully understand. There was even a staged photo of him shaking hands with a city rep in front of the clinic's sign, my name nowhere in sight. I read it twice, 3 times. My eyes scanned the paragraphs for any acknowledgement of my involvement. There was none. Not one. At first, I laughed. Just a quiet, startled exhale. Then, I picked up the phone and called the clinic director, a woman named Kendra I'd worked closely with during the pilot phase. She answered on the second ring. "Barbie, I was just thinking about you. That gala speech of yours last month." "Kendra," I cut in gently, "can I ask you something directly?" "Of course." "That article about Dean, where did it come from?" There was a pause on the line. "Willa reached out to a local journalist a couple of weeks ago. Said Dean had been instrumental in getting the clinic off the ground, and she wanted to finally set the record straight. I figured you were just being modest, keeping your name out of it." "I wasn't," I said flatly. Another pause. "Barbie, I'm so sorry. I had no idea." "It's fine," I said, even though it wasn't. We hung up politely. I didn't bother explaining anything further. Some truths carry their own weight. Later that night, I sat in the dark of my living room, laptop screen lighting my face. I opened a voice recorder, not intending to send it to anyone. I just wanted to hear my own words out loud, something I hadn't done in a while. I hit record. I used to think silence meant strength, that keeping the peace was the mature thing, that speaking up made you needy, difficult, ungrateful. I paused. But silence is just a vacuum. It gives them space to rewrite everything. And if you wait too long, you wake up one day and your name belongs to someone else's story. My throat tightened, but I kept my voice even. "I'm not angry. I'm done." I stopped the recording, saved it, then deleted it. I didn't need the file. I just needed to say it once. Before I went to bed, I emailed Marina one final note. Proceed with the draft. Civil tone. Outline everything. No demands, just facts. She replied 5 minutes later. Already in motion. I shut the laptop. It was late. The world outside was still. But somewhere in the quiet, I could feel the shift. The morning after Marina's email, I woke up earlier than usual. There was no alarm, no task list waiting on my desk. Just a quiet resolve. I made a cup of coffee, opened the file sheet attached, and read through every line. Cease and desist for identity misuse. Termination of joint financial privileges. 30-day notice to vacate the premises. Simple, unemotional, legal. I printed it out, placed it in a manila envelope, and drove west. By the time I pulled into the old driveway, the sun had begun its slow descent. Arizona light turns gold before it fades, and everything about that neighborhood looked picture-perfect. Trimmed lawns, porch decorations, a dog barking lazily behind a fence. No hint of the fracture inside the White House I paid for, but no longer entered as family. Willa opened the door before I knocked. She wore lipstick and pearls, like she had guests inside or had been preparing for a show. Her smile didn't touch her eyes. "If you're just here to lecture again," she said dryly, "please save it. You should be grateful to have a place with family." I didn't speak. I held out the envelope. She hesitated, then took it. "What's this?" she asked, even as she began opening it. "You've been living in my home," I said calmly. "That ends in 30 days. She laughed, not out of amusement, out of disbelief. "You're serious?" I didn't blink. She skimmed the first page, then looked up. "This is ridiculous. You wouldn't actually—" "I don't need to actually anything. It's already filed." Willa's mouth opened, then shut. Her hand tightened on the papers. "You wouldn't dare do this to your own mother." "I'm not doing anything to you," I replied, voice even. "I'm ending something. Something that should have ended years ago." She stood still, as if her body hadn't caught up with her mind yet. "Dean has a baby on the way. We were just getting our footing again." "Why now?" "Because I watched you let my name be stolen. Because I kept showing up, and you kept pretending not to see me. Because this house wasn't just bricks and walls. It was a monument to everything I gave and you buried. I'll be in touch through Marina going forward," I said. "Take care of yourself." I turned to leave. Just as I stepped onto the porch, I heard footsteps behind me. Dean's voice rang out. "You're seriously throwing our parents out over some paperwork?" I didn't turn around. "You know it's not about that," I said. "It's about the lie you both decided to live in. The one you made me fund." "You're blowing this out of proportion," he snapped. "It's a house, Barbie. You've got your own life, money. What do you even need this place for?" I faced him then. "I need the truth," I said. "I need to stop being erased from things I built." His face twisted. "You've always had this superiority complex, like you were better than the rest of us." "No," I corrected. "I just stopped pretending that being needed was the same as being respected." He stepped closer, voice lower. "This will ruin everything. You'll look like the heartless one." "Then let them talk," I said. "You've had a free ride long enough. It's time you learned what it costs." I didn't wait for a response. As I walked to my car, the air felt sharper, cleaner, like something heavy had been sliced open and was finally bleeding out. I passed by Greta Sloan, who was out checking her mailbox. She gave me a look I hadn't seen on her face before. Not pity, not curiosity, recognition. She nodded, slow and deliberate. I nodded back. By the time I got back to the car, my phone had pinged. Filing accepted. Status, active. I looked at the screen, then turned off the notifications. Some people think revenge is loud, screaming, breaking things, slamming doors. But sometimes the sharpest revenge is peace, and peace starts when the door finally shuts, and stays shut. A few weeks passed before I returned to the house. Not the home. That word never fit, and it certainly didn't now. It was a property, a structure built from walls I paid for and memories I didn't choose to keep. The driveway was empty. The porch was bare. Even the wind chimes Willa loved so much were gone. The silence didn't sting. It felt right. I parked at the curb, stepped out slowly, and walked up without rushing. The key still worked, though it wouldn't much longer. Inside, the air smelled hollow. Not bad, just unused. Like a chapter someone forgot to finish reading. I didn't need much from the place. I wasn't here for furniture or keepsakes. I'd come for one box. A collection of old photos, tucked away in a cabinet no one ever touched, and a few tax documents I didn't want ending up in someone else's hands. The rest could stay. I moved from room to room without pausing. The living room was mostly cleared out. A few nails stuck in the wall where portraits used to hang. The hallway echoed when I walked it. In the kitchen, on the counter, I found a folded piece of paper held down by a cracked mug. It was from Oren. I didn't know how to stop her, but I should have stood up. No signature, just that. I didn't cry. I didn't even sigh. I folded the note, slid it into my coat pocket, and opened a cabinet for the folder I came for. In the living room, I sat cross-legged on the hardwood floor, box beside me, paper resting on my lap. Sunlight filtered through the blinds, drawing pale stripes across the floor. I looked around, waiting for something to hit. Anger, grief, satisfaction. But there was nothing, not hate, not love, just the absence of both. I thought back to a Thanksgiving long ago. I must have been 15. I spent the whole day making a pie from scratch. I even called Grandma for her recipe. I wore an apron I bought with my own babysitting money. When I pulled the pie from the oven, Willa barely looked up. She waved me off and said, "Leave the kitchen clean when you're done." Back then, I thought if I just tried harder, if I cooked better or gave more, eventually she'd notice. Eventually, someone would say, "We're proud of you." Now, sitting on the same floor I used to vacuum while Dean played video games, I realized it had never been about the pie, or the house, or the money. It was about space, about whether or not I was allowed to take any up. A soft knock at the open door brought me out of my thoughts. I turned to see Greta Sloan standing there, holding a small brown bag in both hands. "Hope I'm not interrupting," she said gently. "Not at all." She walked in slowly, eyes scanning the room, with something close to regret. "I brought persimmons," she added, "from my garden." I took the bag with a quiet thank you. She hesitated before sitting down on the other end of the couch. "I didn't know, Barbie. I truly didn't." "I know," I said. "You weren't supposed to." We sat in silence for a while. Not uncomfortable, just quiet. After a moment, she asked, "What happens now?" I looked around. The walls felt less heavy, the air easier to breathe. "Now," I said, "now I build something of my own that no one else can rename." She nodded, her expression softening. Back at my apartment later that night, I logged into the county clerk's portal. I navigated to the ownership page and selected the property. There was no hesitation in my fingers this time. Under transfer of title, I typed in the new name, Barbie Trent Family Trust. Under purpose, I entered, donation to Women's Transitional Housing Fund, Central Arizona. No press release, no announcement, no dramatic farewell, just a quiet line in a public database. This house will be used for second chances. I clicked submit. The screen refreshed with a green bar. Status, finalized. I closed the laptop, leaned back, and let the silence settle. Some endings don't need noise. They don't require confrontation or fireworks. Some endings are quiet, clean, and complete. You know, for a long time, I thought loyalty meant silence, that staying quiet, keeping the peace, and putting everyone else first was the price of being a good daughter. But silence cost me more than money. It nearly cost me myself. If there's one thing I've learned from this chapter of my life, it's this. You are allowed to draw the line. You are allowed to say enough, and saying no, especially to those who assume you'll always say yes, doesn't make you cruel. It makes you free. Family isn't just about blood. It's about respect, boundaries, and truth. And if you have to lose someone to gain yourself back, that's not a loss. It's a return. I didn't take their house out of vengeance. I reclaimed it because it was never theirs to define. And now, that house will offer refuge to someone who truly needs it. Sometimes justice doesn't look like punishment. Sometimes it looks like purpose. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever had to walk away from people who refuse to see your worth? Was there a moment when you finally chose peace over pleasing everyone else? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every one. And if this story resonated with you, made you reflect, or even helped you feel just a little less alone, comment 1 if it touched your heart, or let me know where you're watching from. If you didn't connect with it, that's okay too. Tell me why and how you'd like the next story to speak to you. And finally, if you believe more stories like this deserve to be told, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel. Your support helps these voices rise, helps these truths be heard, and keeps this space going for everyone who's ever felt invisible. Until next time, take care of your peace, and don't be afraid to choose yourself.